With this section of digital media, we're going to talk about some legal issues and some safety issues. And we're going to start with legal issues first. And with legal issues, one of the big things that always comes into play and will always be part of this is intellectual property. And so you might be asking yourself, what's intellectual property? Intellectual property is any original creation of your mind that we can protect by law in any shape or fashion. So with that said, you can think really hard and come up with some ideas, but some basic things are like books, some basic designs for like machines, things like that, images that you may create of your own, any kind of artwork you create of your own, any kind of symbol you create of your own, some devices. If you come up with a new device and a new way to make something work, or whatever, that's intellectual property. Anything you can pretty much think of and find a way to that no one else has thought of before and that's original just to you, that's intellectual property. And there are numerous ways to be able to protect that intellectual property. The first one being copyright. And copyright basically says it's a legal right. The jargon here says exclusive legal right to reproduce, publish, sell, or distribute IP, which is short for intellectual property. Copyright says that no one else can use your work without your consent. So when you're looking at things through the copyright lens, when it talks about reproducing, they can't make copies of it, obviously. They can't publish it by putting it on television or anything like that. They can't sell it. They can't, make a version of it for themselves and sell it. They can't, if they were to find some of your stuff and try to distribute it, they can't do any of that without your express permission. You'll see some of this on like NFL broadcast and for sure at the end of the Super Bowl, where it restricts you from reproducing, publishing, or selling or distributing any of the content within that show without their written legal permission. Trademarks are very much the same way, except in this one they keep people from trying to imitate who you are and what you've come up with. So with trademarks, they're simply the mark that's legally registered and established by your company to represent this is my service, this is my product. And what it does by going through that and having it marked just for you, it keeps people from trying to imitate what you make and what you've created, what you've come up with, your own original creation of your mind. And so for that example, a mark is any logo, symbol, word, phrase, etc., anything that can be legally initially marked to your product and your service. For example, with Nike, you have the Nike symbol, the Nike check, but you also have Just Do It. And the way they use Just Do It is also a trademarked phrase. Trademarks are marked with the TM symbol. And a lot of times they have a circle, sometimes they don't. Just like with copyrights have the C with a circle, meaning that this material is copyrighted. While copyrights and trademarks do protect your intellectual property, it's important to understand that fair use comes into play and that you need to understand when that can be helpful and it can be a hindrance to you. Without fair use, schools and everyone else would have to reach out to you. Anytime anyone wanted to use a portion or any part of your material, they would have to reach out to you, and that could become a financial and a burden to you to approve all those. So what fair use is the legal allowance to use anybody's copyrighted material without the permission. This doesn't apply to trademarks, but it does allow you to use portions and parts of people's copyrighted material without the permission. But you have to follow some guidelines. The first of the guidelines is that it must be reasonable. You can't use half or part or a whole of a movie without thinking something, that's an infringement of copyright, or a novel or anything of that nature. And the second one is that it must not lessen the profitability of the work. So if I were to take Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain and say I was going to use an excerpt from it, but use the whole book and claim it to be mine, that falls into a whole other category altogether. Plus, if somebody wanted to read Huckleberry Finn and mine was a lot cheaper, they could get it for cheaper by reading my book. And people will find out these things. So those are the beginning parts of fair use. And there are 4 questions you really have to answer when you're worried about fair use. And so let's look at these for ourselves here. The first one, you have to look at purpose and character of the use that you're using it for. So what's the purpose? How are you using it? Where are you using that? The big thing to realize here is trying to decide, are you using this for commercial gain or are you using it for nonprofit use? And nonprofit use, such as like at a school or anything like that, Commercial gains completely and explicitly kicks you out of fair use, whereas nonprofit work will allow you to um, continue forward in the fair use guidelines checkoff. The next one will be the nature of the work. And this gets a little bit complicated, but what type of copyright material is it? Is it a book? Is it a movie? Is it a song? Those things matter. And we can't answer any of that for you right here because they all have different guidelines, but they matter. And the reason they matter is with the next question. Question 3, when you start talking about what's the amount that you're using, the amount piece of it starts to add up, and it's different for a book, a poem. It's different for an image. It's different for a movie. It's different for music. They all have their own specific guidelines. So depending on the nature, will determine the amount. And lastly, again, it comes back, what's the potential effect on the market? If I were to use a song in a slideshow, a popular song in a slideshow for school pictures, people could find that song on YouTube, that video, and without watching the video, they could play the video and listen to the song, and that would keep them from having to pay for the song. And so for that reason, that would get you thrown out because it wouldn't allow you to, the person who actually created it that holds the copyright, it would lessen the profitability of it for them. If this all seems really complicated and hard to deal with, let's understand that it's been made much easier in the last few years thanks to Creative Commons. And what Creative Commons is a nonprofit organization that works together to make it easy for you to share copyright licenses, copyright material, to share it easily with some just free legal tools. And the big weight this is removed is honestly off of the copyright owner, because using Creative Commons makes it really easy to use and set copyright licenses for your work, and you as the content creator get to decide what your preferences are and how you want it to be used, and put it out there and set a license once and be done with it moving forward. And it's really important to understand that Creative Commons is not separate from any of this. Like, Creative Commons actually works with the copyright. It's in combination together, so when you copyright material, if you're going to have any way of sharing it, any way, shape, or fashion, and if you're not, you can still put it in there and put a Creative Commons license on it that says no sharing whatsoever. But Creative Commons makes it easy to set the parameters for which people can share it with. So there's a couple places here to talk about for sharing this material, or how the Creative Commons looks. So let me draw a little Creative Commons, show a little Creative Commons license looks like, and then we'll talk about how that works. Alright, so here you have the most basic Creative Commons license, and in this most basic license it has one rule, and it's that if you use this, you have to give me credit for it. It's called the BY, the BY Creative Commons license, and so if you use it, you have to tell who it's by. A couple other ones that are here that are of most importance is this one here is the non-commercial one. And so this one you cannot use for any kind of profitability. You cannot, if you make money off of this video, you cannot use my material without reaching out to me and paying me for it. The next one is non-derivative, which means if you use any part of this material, you have to use all of it, and you can't make any changes to it, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but it's pretty limiting. If I want to use a song in my movie, I have to use the entire song. I cannot cut it, cannot crop it, cannot change anything about it. So it can be fairly limiting. And the last one is share alike. So however I share, if I put share alike in my Creative Commons license, it means however I shared it with you, you have to share the work you make using any of it with other people. So if you're making a movie, you can, and I said no, non-commercial and buy, then you have to give me credit for it. You can't make money off of it. And then anyone else that wants to use your work has to give you credit for it, and they can't make any money off of it, and they have to share it in the same way you have. So it's kind of a little circle there. And you can take these and mix them together and make all different combinations of Creative Commons license. There are a few others, but those are the most basic and the ones you would see the most, and the ones that would matter to you. There are some other legal issues that come into play that you need to know about, and they can be things you can be charged with or issues you can have personally. The first one is plagiarism, and plagiarism is really stealing somebody else's work, somebody else's intellectual property, their IP, and proclaiming it to be yours. Now, this really appears more with the regards to original thoughts and original works, especially written works, where you've taken somebody else's original thought, original work, and tried to pass it off as your own. But it can go much deeper than that. But that's stealing somebody else's work and claiming it to be yours. The next two actually come together. The first one's called libel, and this is when you publish. So you write down, you type, you print, you post online a false statement that's damaging to another person's character, their reputation, or just their success in general. In digital media, you're very responsible for anything you publish online. And the next one's slander, and slander is the same thing, except it's saying it online. It's saying it in a video on television. It's saying it in some fashion. It's saying it out loud in front of other witnesses and people seeing it. Slander is just making a false statement that's damaging to that person's character, reputation, or success. And the last one is invasion of privacy. And invasion of privacy gets really tricky in today's age because it's intruding into someone's personal space is the first piece of it. So that can be looking up information on people, that's trying to get information on people that's not public information, that's not yours to find out. It's not going above and beyond to find private information on people. The other one is using somebody's image, likeness, their photo, where you're pretending to be them. What we typically call catfishing, where you're pretending to be them, or setting up an account that mocks them or anything like that, and pretends to be them, even though it's just satire. And then the last one is to reveal information about somebody that they weren't ready to reveal yet. Information belongs to you. Now, if it's public information, they can't really complain about it. But if you know something that's someone's secret, that's someone's personal piece of their life, it is not for you to reveal. And if you reveal it, there can be legal consequences. Safety issues. The first three are pretty obvious safety issues, and they're actually physical safety issues. And the first one's electrical hazards. So this is just not taking, in digital media, we're going to work with cords and lights and cameras and things like that. And it's not taking care of a cord in a certain way where there's a fray in the cord or something like that, where somebody could get shocked or burned. It's just not handling the cords in a way that could lead to some type of injury from shock or burn. The next one is tripping hazards. So kind of falls in the same thing, but doesn't have to be an electrical cord, but it's putting any cord out there where somebody could trip over it. The idea when you're running cables, running cords, in digital media or something, if you ever go to a concert, they have all those cables. If it goes across anywhere where somebody might walk, they have them taped down, tremendously. It's more time to take the tape off of them and pull it up than it probably is to put them down to begin with. But you want to secure those so that people step on them and above them, and that their toe or foot can never get caught below them and trip them, or better yet, keep it out of a walkway and run it overhead. Something of that nature where it's out of the way of anyone stepping on it or tripping over it. And the last one's ergonomics, and that's setting up your any work area, any business you own, so that it's conducive to people working without getting hurt, without injuring their neck, their back. In a digital media setup, it would be making sure that the monitor's up so that their head's not down, making sure they have a comfortable chair, making sure that everything's kind of in the same place where the body's relaxed and not tense, so they don't. Guys, you can injure your shoulder if you're in a wrong angle trying to work on a computer for too long. Ergonomics is setting up for a best fit for your workers so that they can stay safe. And the last safety issues we're going to talk about is digital safety issues. So these are safety issues that are online. The first one's cyberbullying, and this can be a major deal, guys. And this is not just someone giving you information you don't want to hear or say anything bad about you, but it's making the attempt to threaten you, to harass you, to humiliate you, to torment you, to come after you as a person and the person you are, and to use the internet, cell phones, any type of computer device to come after you in that manner, to make your life bad. Guys, just leave people alone. That's what you need to understand. And with cyberbullying, is if you don't like someone, that's fine. Don't spend time and energy worrying about them. Move on. Spend positive energy with your friends and your family, things of that nature. Identity theft is any effort to steal and use someone's identity for personal gain, specifically financial gain. So this talks a lot about social security number, credit card number, any type of bank account where you can use pretend to be them and try to get their personal information. And then we have virus and malware, and these are programs that people design to. Some of them are just to harm someone else's computer, make it run slower, like just to kind of do bad on it. And then you have malware too, that's trying to pull things from their computer, things of that nature. So these are any kind of program that will slow your computer down or try to steal information from your computer. Then we have spam, which is just unwanted emails, and it's unwanted emails in mass generally. Our filters are pretty good about keeping these out of our inbox, but these are typically emails that are trying to get your information, trying to trick you into buying their product that you would never really want, that you've never showed interest in, or to get you to click on a link where they can steal passwords, things of that nature. Then we have online hoaxes, and there's just false claims that spread through any kind of electronic means, typically the internet, and that can be, when they had Hurricane Katrina, they had this big tale about this gigantic alligator that was roaming the streets of New Orleans, and it wasn't even true at all. There was an alligator, and they at one point in time that people killed, but the alligator was actually a crocodile, and it was in Africa. So online hoaxes trying to make people believe stuff that's not true. And the last one's really becoming more and more issue is internet addiction. It's a compulsive disorder that causes people to have an unhealthy obsession with the internet, any kind of digital resource, social media, things like that. It doesn't just have to be on your computer. It doesn't have to just be with the internet. This talks about your phones. People have a real issue with that, and it's happening to adults my age, and it's definitely happening to teens your age, where they have a real worry about being disconnected from the internet, from their phone, which gets them access to the internet, or a computer, which gets them access to the internet, so they can be part of social media or Snapchat or whatever else Instagram, whatever else may be. And that's the last of the digital safety issues, but the ones we need to be aware of. Thanks.